I don't care how you put it. I don't care how you blend it. I don't care how you mix it. I don't care how you put lipstick on a pig. It remains exactly what it is.
I guess the first question is the assumption that the kingdom got invented when we discovered it.
They could sit there and battle each other, but when it comes to really coming right down to following what the Lord wants, they will come together to fight an Ekklesia that's coming forth to say, okay, this is what the king wants.
I think what we have today as a challenge, because of a lack of understanding of kingdom, ecclesia, and citizenship, is we essentially have inactive citizens who are very active in religion, ritualism, but are not active as citizens.
The whole purpose of the plan of redemption has nothing to do with membership in a church.
Yeah.
Redemption is to reconcile the man that was separated from God spiritually, reconcile him back to the Father so that he can now fulfill the purpose of the kingdom.
I can't find the text, but I think it's in 1 Corinthians 10. It says that the earth is the Lord's, not the church building is the Lord's. The earth is the Lord's.
Hello, and welcome to Unlock the Kingdom Within You. This podcast explores the profound truth about what it means to be born into the kingdom, not a religion. On this podcast, we challenge the religious and denominational norms which shackle us from expressing the liberty of Christ by exploring the kingdom, the Ekklesia, and citizenship. If you're born into the kingdom but lost in religion, then this channel is just for you. So thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe.
I think the challenge with the current message of the gospel is it's been personalized, and the gospel of the kingdom is not personal, it's corporate in terms of its essence that impacts personally.
Right.
And so one of the challenges is that we've trained people within the context of denominationalism. So, each one reach one, and the thing about that is, yes, there's an element where that happens and we read about it, but broadly speaking, our influence should be driven from this core premise of a kingdom that is seeking to, like leaven, spread itself through the territory, and which means then change to all parts of the infrastructure of society. It means a total overhaul. It means the transfiguration, not just of the individual, but potentially of the region to look like the kingdom of heaven and earth. And that's a big mandate, but it's a primary mandate that all of the patriarchs were faced with when the Lord met with them and began to call them out.
The governor or whoever it is over that kingdom in that day, when the Ekklesia of Rome were to go into an area and accomplish what they were given to do, they did it in such a way that whenever that ruler or governor or whatever came into the area, it would be like them walking into another piece of Rome itself. In other words, it was fully represented in that area. Whereas what we've done, we have people coming in, and I know what it looks like to be a good Kojic person. I know what it looks like to be a good Baptist person. I know what it looks like to be a good Methodist person. And we have this mentality of our own little worlds that we have, and we don't go outside of that. And we harbor our resentment for anyone who tries to come in and change that. So the same thing happens when it comes to the Ekklesia coming into a territory. Everybody comes up in arms. In fact, they could sit there and battle each other, but when it comes to really coming right down to following what the Lord wants, they will come together to fight an Ekklesia that's coming forth to say, okay, this is what the king wants. This is what the Lord would have in this area. Then suddenly it is measured by their denominational presupposition, is measured by their belief system, is measured by what we think ought to be happening and what should not be happening. And that's why you start getting all of these battles over just trivial things, and some of them are very major things, like various movements like the gay movement or different things, because everybody wants to say, this is what the Lord would have, or that is what the Lord would have. And so we end up in these warfares over things that should not even be on the table when it comes to the things of the kingdom. And what I say is not be on the table. Yeah, we address them. What I'm saying is that we should not be harboring individuals who are saying that, I embrace this or I embrace that. That is very clearly against what the Lord would have us to be doing at any given time.
Anderson, just want to bring you in on this and your thoughts. What do you think marks the Ekklesia as so different from the church? And why do you think that's important?
I'll start by saying very authoritatively that the word church and everything about church is a misnomer. And
Yes.
as long as we hold to that distortion, you will only go down a path of even greater distortion.
Yeah.
And I don't care how you put it. I don't care how you blend it. I don't care how you mix it. I don't care how you put lipstick on a pig. It remains exactly what it is. And
Yeah.
as long as we hold to this distortion, the truth is the church is a misnomer. And I think it has been one of the greatest pulling of wool over the eyes of the global purpose of God
Yes.
anywhere on the planet. And as long as we hold to that again, as long as we hold to the concept of church where we continue to put the meeting above the mission, as long as we continue to celebrate a man on a pulpit as opposed to the purpose of God, as long as we continue to choreograph a service rather than pursue a clearly given vision objective, then we are deep in the bowels of insanity. And whether we've done it in the 1700s or the 2000, I mean, the problem is we've grown so accustomed to the madness that we've accepted it as truth. And we have canceled out our political agenda. We've canceled out our nation building agenda. We have more or less diluted and minimized our evangelistic mandate because we still see evangelism as going on trying to win a soul down the street to populate our church, as opposed to populating the body of Christ and changing nations.
Right.
Jesus said, go into all nations, baptizing the nation. That's a critical thing, because the word used in the Greek for baptize, there are two Greek words for baptize. One is baptismo and one is bapto. And when Jesus said, go and baptize the nations, he uses the word bapto, which is a Greek word that basically communicates the idea of how we make pickles. So you take this piece of cucumber, bury that in a brand new environment and change it all the way through. The church in its current form is incapable of ever doing that. So sometimes I go on platforms and I hear people talk about changing education, changing economies, but this current misnomer can never, I don't care how much you pray about it, I don't care how much ideas you have on it, it will never be able to really bring about that bapto component within nations, because the church does not carry the mandate, doesn't carry the mantle to make that a reality. Only the Ekklesia does.
That's right.
Wow, that's excellent.
Absolutely.
Anderson, that's excellent.
Hey guys, I would ask a question. I would imagine that some of our listeners would be saying, okay, what about this idea that the kingdom is here but not yet? Don't we have to wait until Jesus returns for that kingdom reality to be manifest? How would you respond to that question?
Let me pick that over to Charles first. Charles, what do you think?
Okay. I guess the first question is the assumption that the kingdom got invented when we discovered it.
Thank you, Charles.
That's the problem. The assumption is that when you discover it, begin to talk about it, project it, then you kind of define when it will show up.
Right.
Truth is, the kingdom existed right from creation.
That's right.
We just lost touch with it. And we designed a vehicle to take us to the kingdom while moving away from the kingdom. That's what church is. It's a vehicle that claims to take us one day to a location called the kingdom, when in reality, the kingdom is here, functional, operational. It's only the citizens who are not aware of the existence of their own kingdom. So on the most basic level, that's how I'd put it.
I would absolutely agree. I think what I would say is that I think what we have today as a challenge, because of a lack of understanding of kingdom, ecclesia, and citizenship, is we essentially have inactive citizens who are very active in religion, ritualism, but are not active as citizens. And that's the massive challenge.
If as though we become so patriotic about religion and we're not even aware that we have a nation.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
Fred,
Yes, David.
one of the things that religion has been very good at is to use evangelism, just like Anderson said, to just put fill another seat in a building. The whole purpose of the plan of redemption has nothing to do with membership in a church.
Yeah.
Redemption is to reconcile the man that was separated from God spiritually, reconcile him back to the Father so that he can now fulfill the purpose of the kingdom. Just like Charles said, God doesn't come up with the kingdom after we get saved. God doesn't come up with the kingdom in some futuristic event when Jesus comes back. The kingdom has existed since the beginning, since before the foundation of the world. It's part of God's eternal purpose. But church and religion has used evangelism, has used baptism as a form of membership. Membership. Now, I want to bring in one element that hasn't been spoken about today, but I think is very important in this conversation of nation and ecclesia, and the reality of another grave assault that religion has done on God's eternal purpose, and that is the army of the Lord. See, you can't build a nation without an army. So God has an army, but what the church has done, it has prepared a mob, not an army. It hasn't. We don't have a trained army by the commander-in-chief, Jesus Christ. We have an institution that has a bunch of beliefs and theologies and dogmas and doctrines, and then gets people to observe them and to believe them and to dress that way and speak that way. And so what we have is a mob. And we have a mob of religious Christianity all over the world that is without order, that is without purpose, and is just ambushing itself. And one of the things that we need to address in nation building is we have to get a military mindset. I was a soldier. I belonged to the United States Army, and I fought in a war. I know how to speak as a soldier because I've been a soldier. In the church, most leaders don't know the first thing about military soldiership or what it is to be part of the army of God.
I think Dave, sorry, go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, there's a term that was used in social science at one point. It's called the narcissism of minor differences. It is where you almost like hate another simply because they don't necessarily align completely to your general beliefs and perspectives. And that has been one of the cruel components of church and denominationalism. And I think it has contributed to the majority of the splintered polarization and division within the structures of the body of Christ. But I wanted to kind of circle back to this important point here, because quite a lot is being mentioned about the Ekklesia, including the comment I made earlier that a lot about church, including the comment I made earlier that church is a misnomer. But I think that there are persons who might be on this call who are very church-centric in their perspective, and they hear that and they almost like want to say, how dare you say that when the Bible does in fact say, based on the Bible that you read, that Jesus said, I will build my church. How could this thing be a misnomer when Jesus did in fact, or rather your Bible says that Jesus did say, I will build my church? And that brings me back to just kind of, Tim said it earlier, but maybe Tim, you could kind of enlarge on that, because the point I was making is that we said about how this church is a misnomer, and how does a person kind of connect those dots? How could this be a misnomer when in fact your Bible, in your King James translation, it says that I would build my church? I know you have a lot to say on that. I just wanted to throw the ball in your court there.
Designed by Citizens for Citizens, the Nation Builders app is designed for you to get involved with building the society Jesus had in mind. The app is built upon 4 principles: connect, communicate, community, and collaborate. Connect Through your very own digital profile, share your thoughts and ideas through engaging posts, videos, and events. Communicate. Develop long-lasting friendships with fellow citizens through your own personal inbox. Receive real-time alerts on new comments, messages, likes, and friend requests. Community. Our open door policy means you can connect with online communities and special interest groups to fellowship together. Collaborate. Our civic spaces focus on cultivating the civic life of citizens through community, education, governance, and enterprise. Don't delay. Sign up for free now at www.nationbuilders.community or download our free Nation Builders app on Play Store.
Thank you.
Can somebody define what misnomer means? Misnomer.
It is a name assigned to a thing that really does not fully characterize what the thing is.
Okay.
You give a name or title or definition to a thing that does not appropriately define exactly what it is. So if I look at Charles and I say, Charles, you look like a wonderful Caucasian brother bear man, that is a misnomer. I'm defining him by something that is completely contrary to who he is.
What it is. Got it. Thank you.
So Tim, did you want to speak into that?
What is not a misnomer is when you say Tim is a very handsome guy, then that's not a misnomer. So, we'll get the right ones in there. Yeah, every Bible, just about every Bible you get will have the word church in there. In fact, it's in there 100 and roughly 50. How many?
139.
Okay. And all the different times the word church shows up, it shows up as being translated from the word ekklesia, which is incorrect. It is a mistranslation of that word. And what has happened, the subtle deception that has crept in is that over the years, people have, all they've seen in their Bible is the word church. And then the second area is that when they pull out their Strong's Concordance or something to that effect and look up that word church, it shows the word ekklesia. So the assumption then is that ekklesia is the same word for church. So you have this thing that has been settled into people to believe that that is the way it's supposed to be. The second thing is that most people do not know the history behind the words that were used and why they were used and why King James made that shift in the first place. Because you talked about military, David, his mindset, he recognized the authority because many people said that he was more of a scholar than he was a warrior. So he understood the terminology, he understood the implications of using the word ekklesia and what people could eventually gain from using that word. And so he was very strong in trying to eliminate that out of the mindset of the people. In other words, you have no control, you have no authority, you have no capacity. So I'm the king, I'm a god, everything has to flow through me. And so having said that, now he's doing this thing where he's added this word in there that does not exist to show that his translators were complicit in this deception is in Acts 19, when there was this uproar in Ephesus over Diana. And 3 times the word ekklesia was translated as assembly, because if you look at each time, if they had used the word church, it would have had a negative implication against this church that King James thought he was building. In other words, they said, the assembly was confused. King James, if they used the word church, it would have been saying the church was confused. It says it had to be settled in a lawful assembly, which would suggest that if they used the word church, that the assembly they had was an unlawful church. And those are things that would not have flown well with King James. And so they used the word assembly there where they use church everywhere else. I'm saying all that, that's sort of a historical background. But when you understand that, when you see that, you can see the depth of what was done to get people off track, to get them moving in the wrong direction, and to get them becoming something that they were never intended to be, as Anderson saying, where church now becomes this misnomer that they're walking around thinking that they're doing something. We are the church of whatever, and they call themselves this thing that has no resemblance, absolutely no resemblance to what Jesus really intended. Ekklesia, by the way, was not a religious term. It wasn't this Christian statement, that we have been, again, fooled into believing that it was. Ekklesia, Jesus willfully used that, and nobody misunderstood him. There's several times in the scriptures where Jesus says something, and the disciples will go back and say, hey, tell us what you meant by this. Help us explain this to us. Well, when it came to, he says, I will build my ecclesia, they did not do that because they understood thoroughly what he meant by an ecclesia. They understood that it was a ruling council. They understood its purpose. They understood how it functioned. They understood what it did. And so when he's saying he's building his version of the ecclesia that they recognized, when he said that when he was going to do that, they understood not only the word, but also understood the intent of what it was supposed to bring about. That's why I'm sorry.
Sorry, Tim. I have to come in because I'm just conscious of time. But I think you've given a brilliant explanation there, and I'm glad that you've done that. I've got to come in on this last point because you've literally got 6 minutes left before the end of this session. And so on the back of what you've just said, and I think the key thing there, and a few other things people have said, I just want a very quick round table, as it were, round robin, to just give me a little bit of insight for people on why it's so important that we appreciate the term society in this. We know the subtitle of this event is, building the society that Jesus had in mind and has in mind. So I just want us to touch on this very briefly. You've probably got about 20 seconds each just to come in and give a sense of why that's important. Society is important in the context of kingdom, ecclesia, and citizenship and nation building. So very quickly, Anderson, I'll put you on the hot spot for that. Can you just give me a key thing on society?
Well, it's almost impossible for the current system to really begin to think societal simply because it is so fixated on maintaining its own status quo. And since the word ecclesia is a very political term, at its core it's highly political, then it is important that our conversation begin to include the aggregate of men, because society speaks to the uniqueness of individuals kind of connecting with one another to form something far more dynamic, as opposed to what you see church in its current form is seeking to do. And again, I want to get back to this point that at its core, the word ecclesia is deeply political, and you cannot be political without at least having a societal objective.
Absolutely. David, please keep it brief, guys.
Yeah, for me, it's all about God's eternal purpose. His purpose is his perfect will. So if I, as an individual, truly love God and I want to do his will, then I've got to do it according to his design, according to how he is the architect and builder, not some religious denomination, beliefs, theologies, etc. That's, for me, is the key of it. It's, are we here to do the will of God, or are we here to do what man wants to do?
Right. And Ivan, over to you, the issue of society and why that's important.
I can't find the text, but I think it's in 1 Corinthians 10. It says that the earth is the Lord's, not the church building is the Lord's. The earth is the Lord's. By implication, that means all of society, everything that is on the globe, on the earth, belongs to the Lord. Doesn't he, if he's the owner, doesn't he want to be, doesn't he want to us to steward all that represents the earth? That's why society is important.
Excellent.
Psalm 40.
Kelvin, I just want to bring you in as well. What's your thoughts on society and why it's important?
Well, the whole title of this, the society that the king really wanted, is really a call to him. Even this whole is a call back to him to see what the king then how he wants what he wants executed in his society.
Right, Kelvin, I think we're gonna have to look at your connection because you broke in and out a bit. So hopefully we can get that resolved in the break. And so also just over to Charles.
Right, I think on the most brief, just let's think of it this way. How society means everything. So the question is, how do we function in day-to-day life from a kingdom perspective? And that's a primary concept. The whole Isaiah 2 concept, that the nations shall come and teach us your ways. The concept of ways, what ways are these? So the society you're looking at is a society that has ways, not teachings, not ideas, has actual ways that can be implemented.
Brilliant. And Tim, finally for you, before we close out on this session.
I'll make it real quick. There has, in any nation, it's the society has to have a social construct. In other words, it can't just be thrown together any kind of way. Piggybacking just really off of what Charles just said about the nations will come. There's another similar passage in Samuel which says, I'll raise me up a faithful priest and everyone will come bow before him and asking them, what must I do to receive even a morsel of bread? In other words, the society that he wants, I think we need to understand there has to be a construct where the world understands that they have a source in the earth that is run by the king and that they can benefit from. I'll stop right there. It's probably go very deep with that.
Thank you for joining our fireside talk about the kingdom. My name is Frederick Tobin, and I hope this podcast has been a blessing to you. If you'd like to continue to receive fresh insight into the kingdom, click the notification bell to follow us. For further information about the kingdom, visit our website www.unlockthekingdomwithinyou.com to download your free ebook. See you soon.